When a cold-hearted billionaire pretends to sleep, expecting a poor child to steal from him, he never imagines what happens next. A gentle blanket, a whispered prayer, and innocent kindness will shatter his pride forever, teaching him that true wealth cannot be counted in money. Before watching full story, comment below from where are you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Mr. Robert Harrison was one of the richest men in the city. His mansion stood tall on the hill, with marble floors, golden chandeliers, and paintings worth millions of dollars. He owned factories, hotels, and banks. People bowed their heads when they saw him. They spoke to him with fear and respect. But Robert Harrison was not a happy man. His heart had grown cold over the years. He trusted no one. He believed that everyone wanted something from him, his money, his power, or his influence. People are greedy, he would often say to himself. They only care about what they can get from you. Robert lived alone in his big mansion. His wife had left him years ago, saying he cared more about money than people. His children rarely visited. They only called when they needed money. The only people in his house were the servants who worked for him. Among these servants was Maria, a kind woman who cleaned his house and cooked his meals. Maria had worked for Robert for 5 years. She was always polite, always quiet, and always did her work perfectly. She never asked for extra money or special favors. Maria had a 7-year-old daughter named Sophie. Sometimes, when Maria couldn't find anyone to watch Sophie after school, she would bring the little girl to work. Robert had seen Sophie a few times, but he never paid much attention to her. She was just another poor child, he thought. One cold winter evening, Robert came home feeling very tired. He had spent the whole day in meetings, arguing with people, making deals, and counting money. His head was heavy and his heart felt empty. He went to his large living room and lay down on the soft leather couch near the fireplace. The warm fire made him feel sleepy. Soon his eyes began to close. But just as he was about to fall asleep, he heard small footsteps in the hallway. He remembered that Maria was working late that day, cleaning the guest rooms upstairs. She had brought Sophie with her because the child was sick and couldn't go to school. Robert's eyes were closed, but he was not really sleeping. A thought came to his mind. Let me see what this little girl does when she thinks no one is watching, he said to himself. I'm sure she will try to touch my expensive things or maybe even steal something. Poor people are all the same. So Robert pretended to be fast asleep. He made his breathing slow and deep like a person in deep sleep. His body was still, but his mind was alert, waiting to catch the child doing something wrong. He heard the soft footsteps coming closer. The little girl had entered the living room. Robert expected her to go straight to the expensive vases or maybe touch the golden clock on the table. He was ready to jump up and shout at her. But nothing happened. For a few minutes there was only silence. Robert wondered what the child was doing. Was she looking at his things? Was she planning to take something? He wanted to open his eyes and look, but he controlled himself. Then he heard the softest whisper. The little girl was talking, but her voice was so gentle that he could barely hear her. Mama says you work very hard every day, Sophie whispered as if she was talking directly to him. Mama says you must be very tired. She says rich people have big worries too. Robert's heart skipped a beat. The child was talking to him, thinking he was asleep. Then he felt something soft and warm covering his body. The little girl had taken a blanket from the nearby chair and was carefully placing it over him. Her small hands were gentle as she tucked the blanket around his shoulders. There, she whispered. Now you won't be cold. Robert felt a strange warmth in his chest. No one had covered him with a blanket for years. No one had cared if he was cold or comfortable. But this little girl, this poor child whose mother worked as his maid, was taking care of him. But Sophie was not finished. Robert heard her kneel down beside the couch. In her sweet, innocent voice, she began to pray. Dear God, she whispered, please take care of Mr. Harrison. Mama says he doesn't have a family to love him. Please don't let him be sad or lonely. Please keep him healthy and strong. And God, if you can, please give him some friends who will love him for who he is, not for his money. Robert's heart began to pound. Tears came to his eyes, but he kept them closed. This child was praying for him, for his health, his happiness, his loneliness. She was asking God to send him friends and love. Sophie continued her prayer. And God, please help Mama and me. We don't need much. Just help Mama keep her job so we can eat and have a place to sleep. But please take care of Mr. Harrison first. He needs love more than we need money. The little girl was asking God to help him before helping herself. Robert had never heard anything like this in his entire life. Sophie stood up quietly. She looked at Robert's face and gently brushed a piece of hair from his forehead, just like a mother would do for her sleeping child. "Sleep well, Mr. Harrison," she whispered. "Tomorrow will be a better day." Then she tiptoed out of the room, her small feet making no sound on the marble floor. Robert lay there in complete shock. His whole body was shaking. The tears he had been holding back now flowed freely down his cheeks. For the first time in many years, Robert Harrison was crying. All his life, he had believed that poor people were greedy and dishonest. He had thought that everyone wanted something from him. He had built walls around his heart to protect himself from people who might use him. But this little girl had proven him wrong. She had asked for nothing. She had given him everything: her kindness, her care, her prayers, and her love. She had seen him not as a rich man who could give her things, but as a human being who needed comfort and love. Robert sat up on the couch, wiping his tears. The blanket fell from his shoulders, but he could still feel the warmth of the child's kindness covering his heart. He thought about his life. He had spent 60 years building his wealth, but he had no real friends. He had gained the whole world, but he had lost his soul. He had everything money could buy, but he had nothing that money couldn't buy: love, friendship, peace, and joy. This little girl, who had almost nothing, was richer than him in all the ways that truly mattered. Robert stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the city lights below. Somewhere out there were millions of people like Sophie and Maria, good, kind, honest people who cared about others more than themselves. But he had been too blind to see them. He heard Maria's voice calling from upstairs. "Sophie, come here, sweetheart. It's time to go home." Robert quickly wiped his eyes and sat back down on the couch. He heard Sophie's little feet running up the stairs. A few minutes later, Maria came downstairs with Sophie. The little girl was wearing an old coat that was too big for her, and her shoes had holes in them. But her face was bright and happy. "Mr. Harrison," Maria said softly, "I'm sorry if we disturbed you. We're leaving now." Robert looked at them both. He saw Maria's tired eyes, her hands rough from hard work, her simple clothes. He saw Sophie's innocent smile, her trusting eyes, her gentle spirit. "Maria," Robert said, his voice shaking slightly, "please sit down for a moment." Maria looked surprised, but she sat down on the edge of a chair. Sophie stood close to her mother, holding her hand. "How long have you worked for me, Maria?" Robert asked. 5 years, sir," Maria replied, wondering if she had done something wrong. "And in all these 5 years, have you ever asked me for anything extra? Any favor, any special help?" "No, sir," Maria said. "You pay me fairly for my work. That's enough." Robert looked at little Sophie. "And you, child, what's your name?" "Sophie, sir," the little girl answered politely. "Sophie, do you know who I am?" "Yes, sir. You're Mr. Harrison. You own this big house. Mama works for you. Do you think I'm a good man, Sophie?" The little girl looked confused by the question. She thought for a moment, then smiled. "Mama says everyone has goodness inside them. Sometimes it's just sleeping, waiting to wake up." Robert's heart melted completely. Even this child believed there was good in him, when he himself had forgotten it existed. "Sophie," Robert said gently, "a little while ago, when you thought I was sleeping, you covered me with a blanket and said a prayer for me. Why did you do that?" Sophie's eyes widened. She realized that Robert had been awake. But she wasn't embarrassed or afraid. "Because you looked cold, sir. And Mama says we should always help people when we can, even in small ways. The blanket was small help, but maybe it made you feel better." "And the prayer?" Robert asked. "Mama taught me to pray for people who seem sad or lonely. She says rich people can be sad too because money can't buy everything." Robert looked at Maria. "You taught her that?" Maria nodded. "I taught her to be kind to everyone no matter who they are. Rich or poor, everyone deserves kindness." Robert was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up and walked to his desk. He took out his checkbook and wrote something on it. He walked back to Maria and handed her the check. Maria looked at it and gasped. It was more money than she earned in a whole year. "Sir, I can't take this," she said, trying to give it back. "I didn't do anything special to deserve this." "Yes, you did," Robert said. "You raised a daughter who has shown me what true wealth really is. You taught her kindness, generosity, and love. These are the most valuable things in the world." He knelt down in front of Sophie so he could look into her eyes. "Sophie," he said, "you have given me the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. You showed me that there are still good people in this world. You reminded me what it feels like to be cared for, not because of what I have, but because I'm a human being." Sophie smiled. "You're welcome, Mr. Harrison. Will you be less sad now?" Robert laughed through his tears. "Yes, little angel. I think I will be much less sad now." From that day forward, Robert Harrison was a changed man. He started treating his employees better. He gave money to schools and hospitals. He helped poor families like Maria's. But most importantly, he learned to open his heart again. He made real friends, people who liked him for who he was, not what he owned. And every evening, when he lay down to rest, he remembered the little girl who had covered him with a blanket and prayed for his happiness. He remembered that true nobility comes not from wealth or power, but from love, kindness, and the simple desire to help others. Sophie had taught him that the richest people are not those who have the most money, but those who have the most love in their hearts. And Robert Harrison finally understood that he had been poor his whole life, until a 7-year-old girl made him rich in all the ways that truly matter.